Okay. You know, every time this starts, I must look like a complete and total idiot out there. It starts off with my face inside the camera, and then I walk away and start doing my thing because I haven't really mastered how to adjust the video. Alright, now let me get a marker. Hopefully it'll work. Alright. So, steam sterilization. Let's first discuss what these words mean. A, we have steam. I mean, how difficult could that be? But what exactly is steam? Well, steam is the gaseous state of water. Okay? Water exists in three states: liquid, gas, and solid, right? Steam is the gas. So steam is the gaseous state of water. Now, we'll come back to that in a second, and again, I apologize for the handwriting. So, steam is a gaseous state of water. What is sterilization? Let's discuss that quickly, and we're going to come back to that also. Sterilization is the destruction of all microorganisms. Okay, remember, we had several things that we need to remember. We have cleaning, disinfection or decontamination, and sterilization. Cleaning was the, who can tell me what cleaning is? Well, let's be a little bit more specific. You're right, it is the removal of gross, visible and invisible soil. We have to now express ourselves in the way of the exam. Okay, so it's the removal. Cleaning is the removal of gross, visible and invisible soil. And again, I remind you that the word gross, G-R-O-S-S, means big chunks of soil, dirt, biological, bioburden as they refer to it. Okay, then we have the disinfection, decontamination, which would be the destruction of most microorganisms. Okay, and sterilization is the destruction of all microorganisms, right? So these are the three different stages of sterilization: cleaning, decontamination, and sterilization. And sterilization being the destruction of all microorganisms. All right? So, steam, gaseous state of water. As I told you, water has three states: solid, liquid, gas. Solid being ice, liquid being plain old liquid water, gas being steam. Okay, very nice. Let's remind ourselves that from freezing to boiling, we go from 0 degrees Celsius to 100 degrees Celsius, that's boil, and these two temperatures equal 212, oh my God, degrees Fahrenheit, and 0 degrees Celsius equals 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is a scale for boiling, okay? This is freezing, and this is boiling. May I remind you that only pure water boils and freezes at these temperatures. Only pure water, H2O. Other water that contains contaminants freezes at a different temperature and boils at a different temperature. Okay, but this number, boiling, is important. Because at that point in time, the water turns into steam, if you will. Actually, it turns at different temperatures at different times. Okay? If you reduce the pressure, for example, your boiling point lowers, decreases. Okay? So, and if you increase the temperature, the boiling temperature increases as well. So, it's an interesting thing. All right? So, only pure water boils at this temperature and only freezes at this temperature. Now, I would like to tell you that gas or steam is bigger than water. I'm going to put that over here. Steam is bigger than water. What does that mean? It's a very pedestrian statement that I'm making. Okay, but I want you to remember it. By pedestrian, I mean it's not scientific. So if I were to take a pot of water, close all the doors and windows in this room, start boiling it, the steam from this pot, as it evaporates, will cover the entire room. So how is it possible that a pot of water this big, filled with water, and when it boils out, this entire room is going to be covered in steam, right? It's going to be so foggy, you won't be able to see anything. So steam will occupy this entire room. Amazing. So from this pot, we go to this room. That's pretty big, right? So steam is bigger than water. In other words, the same amount of water, when boiling, when turning into steam, will occupy a much larger volume. Does that make sense? Okay, now I'd like to sort of demonstrate something to you. Now, here in my hands, I have a glove. Might as well be a balloon, but let's say it's a glove. All right, I'm going to inflate it just a little bit. So, let's say I just filled up this glove with air. Now, watch what's going to happen. It looks pretty okay. I can squeeze it pretty well, right? It looks, I could inflate it a bit more, couldn't I? Now, watch this. I'm going to give this a squeeze. What's happening? What am I doing? Did I change the amount of air that I have in there?
No.
And what's happening to my glove? It's stretching. Now look at this. It's now hard. So what happened to the pressure inside, the air pressure inside? I increased the pressure. So, it's a little bit distorted now. Sorry, glove. It looks like a statue. Right? So, but in any case, the pressure went down. I decrease my space without increasing the amount of air, and I increase the pressure. So far, so good? Are we together? So if I were to, now that we had this visual, I want you to think about this. If I were to take my room full of steam, if I were to take all its walls and start moving it in, what's going to happen in this room that's filled with steam as I start moving the walls in and there's no place for the steam to go? Pressure is going to increase. I want you to hold that thought as we're sort of learning this stuff. So far, so good. Are we together? Okay, let's move on. So, let me introduce another word into this mix over here. Can I erase this? Okay. Here's an interesting word. And the word is sterilant. Sterilant. Is it related to any of the words we have up on top?
Sterilization.
Sterilization. So, can anyone, based on the language that you see over here, can anyone define for me the word sterilant?
Is a medium that achieves sterilization?
That's good. So, good. So, the word sterilant, but, so let me write down what you just said. Sterilant is a medium that facilitates sterilization. So go ahead, write that down. So the word sterilant means it's a medium that facilitates sterilization. So what can I compare it to?
Steam.
Well, no, I don't want to compare it to steam yet. Steam is a sterilant. In this particular case, steam equals sterilant. And in this particular case, it is a medium that facilitates sterilization. The question is, how? So, but before I go there, I just want to make sure that you understand the statement. It is a medium that facilitates sterilization. It is something that causes something else to become sterile. Sterile means does not have any microorganisms on it. Does that make sense? So do you understand the word sterilant? You understand the definition? It is a medium that facilitates sterilization? Okay, good. It's a very key concept. You must understand these concepts before you move on. So can I move on? Yeah. So, given the fact that steam is our sterilant, how does steam sterilize anything? It's just water that turned into gas. How does steam facilitate sterilization? How does that happen? Well, I can cook many different things that doesn't make it sterile. Why couldn't I just throw it into my instrument into a pot of boiling water then and keep it there for an hour or two? I ain't gonna do it. So, I'm gonna tell you a little story. You ready for a little story? Back about 30 years ago, I found myself in this place called Fort Benning, Georgia. It's an army base. And over there I went through this thing called the basic training. So one day they took us into this, what they call the down south theater, also known as theater. It was a movie theater. We never went there, but it was a movie theater on base. And over there they used it to give us lectures. And we must have been sitting in these incessant lectures in the very beginning for hours and hours and hours. And what you couldn't do is fall asleep. And the only thing you wanted to do was fall asleep. So I'm sitting there in that theater, and somebody is giving a lecture, and what they have down south, anyone ever been down south? They have cockroaches. Yay big.
Yes.
Did you say flying ones?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen those too. So I hate cockroaches. I'm deeply traumatized from my childhood as seeing cockroaches. I lived in a place where there were a lot of Navy people, and Navy people bring in their boots back cockroach eggs. So all these cockroaches mutated, you couldn't kill them for nothing. I've seen all sorts of, all breeds of cockroaches. Well, it doesn't matter. So I'm sitting there, falling asleep, and in front of me crawls a cockroach yay big. I'm looking to the left, I'm looking to the right, and I don't see anybody. And I go, kasplat! My question to you is, what killed the cockroach? The pressure killed it. People say my boot, it's true. But my boot was what you would call a medium that facilitated the kasplat of a cockroach. So the end of that story is, I'm glad you got the concept, okay? So it was the pressure that killed the cockroach. The end to the story was that indeed someone was watching what I was doing. It was the drill sergeant. He said, "Boy, you picked that up." So the boy picked up the roach. He said, "Boy, let's go outside." Outside was about 110 degrees. I said, "Boy, you know what you did?" I said, "No, drill sergeant." He said, "Boy, you just made his wife and children orphans. You're a killer, son." I said, "No, I'm not a killer, drill sergeant." He said, "You're not a killer. What are you doing in my army?" I said, "I'm a killer, drill sergeant." "Oh, so you're a killer." In any case, after about 20 minutes of the circular discussion whether I was a killer or not a killer, not a killer, he said, "Okay, boy, you take off your steel pot, which is your helmet, and you start digging." Imagine, this is Georgia, 1986. It's hot. I take off my helmet and I start digging. I dug and I dug and I dug in sand. Anyone ever digs sand knows that it's very hard to dig a sand. So in any case, I dug up a lot of sand. He made me bury the cockroach in that grave. Then he made me make a memorial plaque for the cockroach out of twigs and stones. And then I stood there over the cockroach's grave with the helmet in my left hand and my right hand over my heart, singing the American anthem until I went hoarse. That, by the way, is how I learned the words to the American anthem as well. So imagine that. In any case, so that story having been told to you, I'm telling you that it was the pressure that killed him. Now, remember my thing with the glove? Okay, very good. So now we're going to put a few things together. So, It's the pressure that killed the cockroach, right? All right, so it was my boot that was something that facilitated the pressure killing the cockroach. What was I doing with my glove when I squeezed it? I was creating pressure inside the glove. And if anything was inside my glove, it would feel squeezed as well, now wouldn't it? Imagine yourself on the MBTA bus during rush hour. Anyone ever been on a rush hour in an MBTA bus? Did you feel the pressure? Especially if the driver is there with a texting and trying to kill you at the same time. And in any case, the fact of the matter is you feel the pressure. Now imagine you're just a teeny little bug sitting on the end of your surgical instrument, and you are inside this machine right over here that we call the autoclave, okay, or a sterilizer, steam sterilizer. And we keep building and building and building the pressure inside by boiling the water. We keep boiling the water inside there, and it keeps turning into more and more steam, and the steam is getting collected inside that box over there, inside that steel chamber with a solid door, okay? Nothing is getting out, only staying in, so there's more and more pressure. So how are the microorganisms being destroyed by steam?
Pressure.
But that's just one of those things. So, steam destroys by A, pressure, and B, because steam is hot. And you know that when you're boiling yourself a pot of water to make tea or coffee, and you're trying to turn off something or move something on the other burner, and that steam hits your hand or arm, how does that feel?
Hot.
Hot. By pressure and heat. So Steve, you were kind of right when you said it cooks it. Well, it does. But first, it crushes it. It's the pressure. And then it cooks it. With fire. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Well, that's basically the essence and the formula by which we destroy microorganisms using steam. Pressure and heat. There's also one more factor that I'd like to add in there. And I'm not going to put it with the letter A or B, but I will write it in big letters. Time. You can't just do it halfway. It has to be done over a specific period of time, otherwise you didn't do it. You have to kill it completely. You have to kill it thoroughly. I mean, I don't even know what else to say it, but you do it once, you do it right, and you do it for a prolonged period of time, enough to make sure that, hey, is everything dead? Yeah, it's dead. All right, we're done. When you only do things halfway, it only costs you later. If you've been watching the news, you know I'm right. In any case, here we are. So how do we kill?
Pressure. Heat and time.
I mean, we may as well end the class right now. If you understand this, you understand everything, but we won't. We're going to move on and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail, because I have to teach you a little bit about the mechanics of steam sterilizers, all right, to make things work completely and totally in your mind. Can we move on?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
And for the time, the facility will let you know how much.
You don't have to do anything. You never have to have a timer. The machine is preset to specific conditions. So you, fortunately and unfortunately at the same time, you don't have any latitude to select the amount of time. You can select a cycle. Like for example, on your machine at home that does the laundry, you can set, you don't have the ability to set the time or, well, you can set the timer a little bit, but you can't select a cycle. You have different selections of cycles. They're preset. You can't modify them at all. Okay, a cycle is a cycle. Delicate knits or whatever the heck they have over there, I don't know. On my machine there's an automatic cycle. I like that one. Okay, and so, steam sterilizer. A steam sterilizer is a pressure cooker. Pressure cooker looks like this. Okay? It is a cross section of a pressure cooker. It is a pot with nice kind of like lips around the edge. And into here fits the lid. And it fits into these grooves. Now, I'm going to draw a shaded area right over here and a shaded area right over here. We're going to come back to this. So this is our lid. This is our pot. Right over here, I'm going to draw a valve. Okay? Over here, I'm going to put a little bit of water. Underneath, I'm going to put in heat. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a little tray over here. A little tray. Alright? And on this round tray, and this round tray is not going to be solid. It's going to have holes in it. Kind of like a mesh. Right? Can you see the little table over here? And on this little table, I'm going to put my little pair of scissors that I'm going to sterilize. And just for your visual pleasure, I'm going to put my little cockroach on the end of the scissors. Can you see how beautiful this is? Amazing, right? Totally, totally fantastic. Warms my heart. It's about the size of the guy I stumped. God, it was so nasty picking him up off the floor. I mean, I really did a nice job splattering him. Okay. So, very important to understand. The areas that I shaded over here, I'm going to call this the gasket. So, let's sterilize. Shall we? Heat is applied to my pot. Water begins to boil and it turns into steam. So, water turns into steam. As I apply the heat to water, the water will turn into steam. What did I tell you about steam? Steam is bigger than water. So therefore, steam is going to expand inside this closed chamber. So my pressure cooker, and I'll tell you a story about a pressure cooker, unless I already told you a pressure cooker story. Did I tell you my pressure cooker story? No, I haven't. Oh, I will. Oh, I will. So, and it has nothing to do with Boston Marathon. So, it has to do with my wife. So, in any case, water turns into steam and it expands. Water turns into steam. Steam expands inside the closed / sealed chamber. Now, before I boiled the water and turned it into steam, before steam started expanding, what did I have left inside the chamber? When I closed the chamber, I had water in the bottom, I had my scissors, my little table, my little cockroach sitting on the end of it. What was in here?
Steam.
Huh? No, no steam yet.
Oh.
You're right. Steam came later. You had air left over. As the steam is expanding, what's happening to the air?
It's going
It's going away. From where?
the valve.
Thank you. You guys are brilliant. Brilliant, I tell you. Did everybody catch this discussion? So, remaining air, and you know what? I'm going to put it right over here. I'm going to put a couple of words right here. Residual air. Residual means leftover. Stuff that was left behind. Residual air. What happens to residual air as the steam expands?
It goes out.
It gets pushed out. So, residual residual air, we'll keep it simple, escapes. So I'm going to put number 3 over here. Very important. Residual air is displaced, bless you, by expanding steam. I want you to really, really write that down and understand what we're doing. As we're boiling the water, as the water turns more and more into steam, residual air gets pushed out from that valve over there on top. Residual air is displaced. Displaced, which is another word for pushed out, from the enclosed chamber by the expanding steam. So far, so good? So in the essence, there is no air during sterilization. It's very important because air is a great insulator for heat and for cold. So we want to get rid of the air. And how we get rid of the air? By expanding the steam inside the chamber. The question becomes then, how does this valve differentiate between steam and air? It's very simple. It's a very simplistic little mechanism. When it heats up to a certain point, the spring inside there compresses. Because the pressure, when it gets to be really high, will actually compress the spring inside the valve, and it's going to stop. And steam is going to stay in, and the air already escaped. Simple. No moving parts, really. No electronics. Nothing that says, I'm going to count the pressure. When it gets to 35 psi, I'm going to electronically close the valve. Beep. Simple. 1, 2, 3. It's like your teapot begins to whistle as the steam begins to escape with a certain speed, and that's when the water is boiling, when the whistle blows, right? In this particular case, this valve automatically closes when the pressure becomes too great inside the chamber. So a little bit of steam escapes, but so what? After a while, when the pressure is high, it's just going to keep building. And when you turn off the heat, that valve is going to open and the remaining steam is going to blow off. Wouldn't it? Sure. Just turn off the heat and everything is going to be all right. So, as the residual air is displaced by expanding steam, this has a term that you must know. Number 3 is also known as gravity air displacement. This is super important. You must know the definition of the words gravity air displacement, and now you do know what it means. And it means that residual air is displaced by expanding steam. This equals gravity air displacement. Does everybody understand the meaning of the word gravity air displacement? Awesome. And now, I am here to tell you that all of this is happening at approximately 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which equals to 121 degrees Celsius, roughly. Or centigrade, whatever the heck they call it, makes no difference. Celsius, centigrade, all the same. So, the gravity air displacement and all of this is happening at roughly 250 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which translates to 121 degrees Celsius. All right? In the meantime, the gasket right over here is preventing the air from and steam from escaping. If it wasn't there, nothing would work. Am I correct in my assumption?
Yeah.
Sure I am. Of course I'm correct. I couldn't be wrong. Somebody call my wife and tell her that. Okay, so at this moment in time, the little cucaracha sitting on the end of my scissors over there is now squashed and burned, cooked, as you so aptly put it, Steve. Right? Done. Cucaracha is no more. Muerto. A little Spanish for you, free of charge. Okay? So, very important for you to remember. Now, my little pressure cooker story. One day I come home and I find my wife in extremely good mood. Now I know something's wrong. So, she says, honey, she says. Oh, now she calls me honey. I'm in trouble. Because usually she uses an expletive to greet me. Well, in any case, the fact of the matter is, she says, I got us the most amazing thing. And I'm thinking, oh, Lord, please, anything. My first question is, Steve?
How much?
Thank you. How much? She says, you don't even know what I got. I said, oh, please, just tell me how much. I just need to make sure to, so the things don't bounce. She says, but I bought an amazing dish to cook dinners in no time. I'm like, what's wrong with the damn frying pan? What's wrong with the pot that we already have? Says, honey, it's German stainless surgical steel. Oh, I know that hurt. Not only is it German stainless surgical steel, but it's Carl Zepter German stainless steel. I'm thinking, oh, I'm already counting decimal points and everything else. I said, how much? But I'm going to be able to cook chicken soup in 8.5 minutes. Ah, how much? But I can cook rice in 2 minutes. Oh, in any case, it turned out to be $250. Beautiful. We cooked it once. I don't think it was washed. It went straight to the attic. But this is not my point. This is not my point. Yeah, we cooked chicken soup in 7.5 minutes, just like the advertisement said, but we never used it again. So, God knows it's still up there somewhere. But a month later, I found myself walking in a dental instrument show here in Boston. And I'm walking, going la 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 la, and all of a sudden, with my peripheral vision, I spotted my wife's pressure cooker. I walk myself over to the table and I look. I don't see, it doesn't say Carl Zepter anywhere. I look around, but it is my wife's pressure cooker, except it had, over here, it had a gauge right over here that measured pressure. It had another gauge that measured, guess what? Temperature. And the guy put on a $20 Walmart heating coil, you know, the one they sell for 20 bucks. It's electric coil, you plug it in, you can cook on it. He welded it on the bottom, and it had a cord. And over here, it had a little thing called a timer. So, Carl Zepter pot, $20 heating coil, couple of $5 gauges and a $5 timer, and he was selling a dental tabletop sterilizer for $1,500, which is a bargain for a tabletop sterilizer. It's a bargain. He also had a little table that went in there. All right, so he probably profited about $800 per unit after all that was said and done. I come up to the guy that's selling and said, that's a Carl Zepter pressure cooker, ain't it? That's my little pressure cooker story. So, in other words, my dear friends, even in your book, if you look inside the picture that talks about steam sterilization, we're talking about the first unit was a pressure cooker. As a matter of fact, you got a pressure cooker, you want to sterilize something home, more power to you. Stick it in there. Just like this. Put it on a little table with a mesh in it and sterilize it. It'll work. Perfectly. Okay. And so, I'd like to give us one more little definition over here before I show you how a real sterilizer is put together. Okay? Instead of this valve thing over here, I'm going to call it something else. I'm going to call my valve a thermostatic trap. Thermostatic trap. So just commit that to paper and let me know when I can erase it for you. But do you see how simple sterilization with steam is? No matter how many computer boards, how many touch screens they can put together. It makes no difference from this unit here, except this one, you're the touch screen. You're the computer board. You just need to know when to turn these dials, okay? So don't put too much stock in some of these computer-driven systems. At the end of the day, they may fail, and that's why they all have a manual cycle. Okay? Does this make sense? Do you understand the meaning of gravity air displacement? Do I need to go over anything? Cool? All right, may I erase? Awesome.
No.
All right. Let's go then. And so we're going to take our pressure cooker and turn it on its side. And this is going to be our chamber. Over here, please use your imagination, will be the chamber door. I'm making it round because the chamber is round. And this would be our chamber door. Around the door will be our gasket. Sometimes the gasket is actually around over here. Door. Gasket. Chamber. Chamber is made out of stainless steel. Over here, we have, in the bottom front, we have the drain. The drain drains out and it has a little bit of an elbow right over here. But I'm going to highlight this area right over here. And you know what I'm going to call it right over here? I'm going to call it thermostatic trap. Do you remember where we had the thermostatic trap before? That little valve on top, right? Over here, I'm going to draw a little nozzle. And in front of a nozzle, I'm going to put a little plate. This, okay. We're going to call this our steam inlet, and I'm going to call this a baffle plate, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. Now, I'm going to do something now that kind of doesn't make any sense, but it will. What is Steve drawing? Thank you. Excellent. That was an excellent pickup, Steve. So, I am drawing insulation, except, you know, we don't really call it insulation, even though a lot of times it is just plain old insulation. This right over here is the jacket. We're going to go over all of these things in a moment. And let's stop right over here. So just like our pot that we had before, except in our pot we poured the water, here we pour in the steam through the steam inlet. So the steam shoots out. right in there. But right before the steam, I put this thing called a baffle plate. You see that? You guys know the meaning of the word baffle?
No.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Oh.
I'm going to demonstrate for you what baffled means. Look. Look. I'm baffled. So steam comes out at a high rate of speed. There's a baffle plate in front of it. It goes slam. Baffle. Whoa. So baffle plate prevents the steam from shooting out directly into the chamber. But it hits it and it spreads out evenly throughout the entire chamber. You see that? So the steam shooting out this way really hard, what it does, it makes a sudden turn and it spreads out in different places evenly rather than just shooting out this way. We're going to put a little X over here. The baffle plate prevents it from shooting out directly into the center. Otherwise, instruments directly in the center would be the only ones affected really hard. Does that make sense? We don't want that to happen. We want the steam to be baffled and to spread out evenly going around. Does that make sense? The drain. The drain is customarily in the front bottom of the sterilizer. The drain is where the residual air and ultimately water, when steam condenses back to water, will drain into. Okay, so whatever has to come out will come out over here. So let me ask you a question. Where would be the residual air that didn't come out? Where would it be stuck? By the drain. So whatever a little bit of air that may be left over will be left over here. Just like a little bit of water always collects before your drain inside your inside your tub, right? Just like here, a little bit of air always pools over there. Why am I spending the time to tell you this? Because this is the coldest place in the entire sterilizer. Coldest and with the least amount of pressure, because that remaining air pocket is sitting there and it's not going anywhere. Do you kind of get the feeling what I'm talking about? Anybody lives in a house or ever live in an apartment where there was steam heat? Ever hear the pipes banging in an old apartment building? Bang, bang, bang. You know what that is? That is the heating system trying to dislodge an air pocket stuck somewhere. And that is, it's simply hitting the pipe so it goes ring, so it rattles it, so that gas bubble dislodges and the system, pardon me, passes gas, and the steam, hot steam, is able to go through your radiators and heat them up. Imagine that? So, the same thing here. So why am I telling you this? By the drain is the coolest, and by coolest I don't mean hip or popular. It is the coolest, meaning coldest, place inside the chamber. Why is that important? And I will explain. Let me ask you a question. If you were a microorganism that was trying to escape sterilization, meaning being killed, where would you find yourself fleeing to? The coolest spot, right over there. So if I wanted to test my sterilization process, and I wanted to place what they call a biological indicator, a little package like this, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, where would I want to put it to test how effective my machine is? In the coolest spot, next to the drain. Why? Because if I kill what's inside of this package over here in the most difficult, most coolest spot, where there's less pressure than any place else, if I kill it right over here, that means I killed it here, 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 or here. Because the rest of the spots are hot and have the greatest pressure. This is the coolest place and has the lowest pressure. Capiche? We all understand? Hey, we're in good shape. We're in good shape. So far, so good? Now, the question then becomes, hey, why the heck do I need a jacket around the chamber? Well, because unlike our pressure cooker, where temperature fluctuations on the outside don't really matter much. For sterilization, if the air is really cool inside the room where the sterilizer is, cold air is going to touch my chamber, and what's going to happen to the steam around the edges? It's going to turn into liquid, into droplets. The jacket keeps the outside of the chamber just as hot as the inside of the chamber. That is why many, many times in the new sterilization machines, it's not just some kind of an insulation wrap. They also let steam inside the jacket. So the temperature inside the chamber and inside the jacket is the same, and the pressure is always it's also the same. So it's kind of like a two-layer. It's like a two-layer of protection. So the jacket makes sure that there's no condensation inside the chamber, and I'm going to put that in here. Jacket keeps the chamber temperature stable to prevent condensation inside, because condensation equals wet pack. Wet pack equals unsterile. Truer words could never be spoken. So if the jacket doesn't keep the temperature, we have a problem. If there's one other problem that we have to sort of address, potential problem, and that would be the gasket. If the gasket does not hold, and remember, I believe I showed you the gasket last time. Let me dig it out. So I open the door, and I pull out the gasket. If this guy right over here, if this gasket on this chamber door does not hold its own, just like in your refrigerator at home, if the door gasket doesn't work, if the door gasket does not, prevent the warm air with moisture to enter your refrigerator, all the contents of your fridge are going to be wet, right? Sweaty. That's the last thing you need. And when you find the contents of your fridge sweaty, that means your door gasket stinks, or somebody didn't close the door properly, right? Well, everybody has to close the door properly, or the machine properly is not going to turn on. And in this particular case, we're going to have a wet pack. Wet pack equals unsterile, because bacteria and all microorganisms like wet, warm, and dark places. And if our packages are wet, we have a problem. It's just not cool. I mean, it is cool. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And please remember that the door gaskets have to be checked in the beginning of every shift, and they have to be cleaned with lint-free cloth to make sure that the door seals properly. And if you see cuts, cracks, or other deformities to the gasket, you might as well not run the sterilization cycle. It's just not going to be good. You don't want to take a chance. Remember, every time you sterilize, you put your name on every package that's inside the load. That information is kept for 7 years. Someone comes down with infection, they can sue. Your name is on there. So, this right here was a further, display of what we call gravity air displacement sterilizers. But we also have another form of steam sterilizers known as dynamic air removal sterilizers. Okay, so I'm going to introduce this dynamic air removal. Dynamic air removal.
This is what this process is called?
No, what this process was called was just regular steam sterilization, also known as gravity air displacement. I'm moving on right now to a different product called dynamic air removal. Also steam, but I'm going to explain what dynamic means. Dynamic means action, or action of air removal. See, gravity air removal, or gravity air displacement, is expanding steam pushing out the residual air, right? Dynamic means that we exercise some degree of force or some action, okay, to remove the air. So dynamic air removal uses pumps to pump out the air before we inject steam. So dynamic air removal uses vacuum pumps to remove residual air from the chamber. Go ahead, write that down. Go ahead, write that down. And I want you to understand this.
Vacuum?
Yeah, so we create a vacuum inside the chamber and we pump out the air from the chamber before we put the steam inside.
Does that negative pressure lower the boiling point?
Brilliant. Of course it does. Excellent pickup. When we create a vacuum inside the chamber, the steam, because vacuum creates, decreases pressure. And as the pressure is decreased, boiling point decreases. So the water turns into steam at a much lower temperature. Depending on how deep the vacuum is, we're probably lowering it by about 10 degrees. It's a lot. And if the vacuum is deep, we can boil the water at barely over room temperature. Imagine that. Imagine that. We won't have too much pressure. For that, we still need the heat. So, what is the difference between dynamic air displacement machines and gravity air displacement machines? Well, gravity air displacement machines use just expanding steam, so it's a fully manual cycle. We heat up the water, it turns into steam. Dynamic air displacement, we introduce a new vacuum pump into the mix. So into this picture, we can add one more nozzle. Let's say we put it over here, and we call it a vacuum pump. And the vacuum pump will suck out the air from the chamber before we put the steam in. Now I want to tell you that dynamic air displacement machines, first we have gravity air displacement machines, machines like this one, and then we have the machines with a vacuum pump, which is basically all of the machines in the hospitals are dynamic air displacement machines. And we remove the air from the chamber before, thereby reducing the boiling point of water. But what we also do at the same time is we increase the temperature. We heat up the temperature higher. Why are we doing this? Brilliant. Did everybody hear that?
No. Quicker.
It will be quicker. And that leads me to a point. The higher the temperature, the less time you need it. The lower the temperature, the more time you need. So time and temperature are what they call inversely related to one another. Okay? The more expensive the pressure cooker, the less money you have in the bank. Alright? So, the higher the temperature, the hotter. Okay, let's say you're in a hurry and you want to heat something up in your oven. What do?
Turn it on.
Turn it, crank it up, baby. Yeah, it might get slightly singed on the outer edges, but boy, will it be done a little bit quicker. Yeah. See? Time, temperature, proportions. If you want to do it right, lower the temperature, let it cook a little bit longer, but you know what? It's going to be even heat distribution. Which leads me to the next point. Are we clear so far?
Yeah.
By the way, I did mention to you that dynamic air displacement system runs between 270 and 275 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly 131 degrees Celsius. That's the dynamic air displacement temperature. Now, before I move on to my next topic, what did I say my next topic was, by the way? I kind of lost track for a second. I said something, what was it, Steve? You're my, like, a black box on a plane. What did I say? I said something. That moves me to the next point. What was I talking about before? I was
Relationship.
a relationship. Yeah. Oh God, I hate relationships. In any case, what I want to show you here is one more test. Okay, dynamic air displacement systems use another test. All right, pass it around. You can't see what's inside, but I will tell you what this is. Can I erase this? God, you know, I had something in mind and I was going to move to it, and that's it. The brain is not what she used to be. Notice the name on the package. What does it say? What's the name of the test? Bowie Dick test. That's right. It's very important. Oh gosh. Oh yeah. Ah, I remember. Steve, remind me as I move on that I was going to talk about heat transfer. As soon as I'm done with this little topic here, I'm going to talk about heat transfer. All right. So, dynamic air displacement sterilizers utilize the test that's now being passed around the room, that little blue package, which is known as the Bowie / Dick test. It is also known as residual air removal test. So what this little packet that's now circulating around does is that you throw it inside the chamber before the workday begins. You run a test cycle, and you run a cycle with that package in there. And that package, once you open it up, is supposed to give you results. Did the vacuum system inside the sterilizer effectively remove all of the residual air? If the package says no, it didn't, machine is not working. Machine is not working. And there was one more test that we placed over the drain, right? Remember that green package right over here? That one says that it's a Steam Plus pack called biological indicator. So, right here we have a living biological entity, which we'll talk about, that we're supposed to kill. And we're going to open this up, we're going to look inside the little ampule that's there, and we're going to make sure that what was inside was destroyed. And we put this with every load that we run in the hospital. Now, I want to caution you right over here that biological indicators, and you know what? I'll talk about this separately in a couple of minutes. All right, we're going to get back to this. I was going to talk about the Bowie Dick test, also known as the residual air test. What does it test? It tests if the residual air was removed from the chamber. That's what this test does. But it also tests one more thing, and it's important to know. It tests specifically the door gasket. Because if the door gasket is leaking, as the vacuum pumps do their thing, more air gets sucked in through a partially closed door because the gasket is screwed up. So if the gasket doesn't hold, we don't create a vacuum. If we don't create a vacuum, the Bowie Dick test or the residual test is going to fail. If it fails, the sterilizer is taken out of commission. You may not use it for sterilization purposes. It might work, but then again, it might not. You will never know. You will know when somebody gets sick, or more times than not, will die. You don't want that on your conscience now, do you? Does this make sense? Are we okay? May I erase?
Yeah.
All right. And now, I was going to talk about the heat transfer, and then I was going to talk about the biological indicator, right? Okay, good. Keep me steady on this, otherwise I will forget. I know I'm blitzing you with a lot of information, and I'm here to tell you that all of this that we've put on the board, all of it, will be on the test. All of it. As you review the video later, if you review your notes, it will be on the test. There's no baloney here. This is just the essentials and the basics. Alright, I know we've blown through a lot of it in just a little bit over an hour. But you know what? You must know this verbatim. You must know it, you must feel it, you must understand it. Don't mess with it. This is important stuff. This is meat and potatoes of sterilization. 60% of what you do in the hospital will revolve around steam sterilization. So now, heat transfer, right? Or was I going to talk about heat transfer? Let's talk about heat transfer. It's a quickie. Now, we have 3 different types of heat transfer. Conduction, convection, and radiation. You must know these 3 words. More specifically, you must know the first 2, conduction, convection. Conduction. Heat transfer by direct contact. Example, frying pan. As you're making your favorite egg sunny side up, you take an egg, you put it in a hot frying pan. It begins to sizzle. Direct contact. Heat transfer. Egg cooks. Right? Do you understand the concept of conduction?
Yeah.
If you take a spoon and you put it in a hot tea, does the spoon heat up?
Yes.
Conduction. By the same token, as the spoon conducts heat away from your tea, the tea also cools off. Right? Convection. Heat transfer by circulating gas, be it air, be it steam. Example, baking bread in the oven. As you put in your bread dough inside the oven, the hot air begins to circulate. The dough begins to rise and bake. You understand? Heat transfer by convection. Radiation. We don't care what this is because radiation is not used in the hospital. There will not be questions on the test dealing with radiation. See how much I love you. I won't make you do extra, but if you want to know what this is, sun's rays as they fly through the atmosphere and they strike your skin and you feel hot. Radiation. Microwave oven, sending radio frequency, radio waves through the chamber of the microwave, through your food, exciting the cells, exciting the particles inside your food, and as they vibrate, they heat up because of friction within. There is no actual heat transfer inside the microwave. Radiation. Make sense? We don't irradiate anything in the sterile processing department, so forget it. Steam sterilization is the example of what? Conduction or convection? Yeah. Thank you. Circulating gas. Steam is gas. It circulates. So let me ask you a question, and it is very important. Why am I talking about conduction and convection? A, there's going to be 1 or 2 questions about conduction and convection, so please know the difference. As the gas is supposed to circulate throughout the chamber, what could you possibly screw up when you load the sterilizer to prevent the gas from circulating?
Too much stuff.
Overloaded. Don't put too much stuff inside the chamber. Thank you. Thank you. So as you put, you packages inside the sterilizer, don't overload it. Just because you made it fit doesn't mean it's going to work. Okay? It's like overloading your washer. It's like overloading your dryer. You may have gotten the door closed, but it's just not happening. You're going to take out dirty clothes. The same thing here. The air needs to circulate freely around the packages. If it doesn't penetrate. Right? You may also not put packages in such a way inside the chamber that they touch the outer walls. Because the outer walls are hot. The packages will burn and the gas will not circulate. So there must not be any contact. So one way to remember where water won't flow, steam won't go. Kind of like that, right? So if you're putting things too tightly in there and the water cannot flow freely around it, the steam is not going to go. So things need to be laid out neatly with enough space for things to flow around them. Okay? So packages cannot touch one another. Packages cannot touch the sides of the chamber, right? Make sense? And one more thing that people don't really know all the time, or don't think about, you cannot wrap things too tightly. If you wrap things too tightly, you're creating insulation rather than, packaging. So things need to be able to get into the package as well. Too tightly wrapped packages don't sterilize very well. Does that make sense? All right. Okay. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. May I erase this?
Yes.
We're almost done, folks. We're almost done. I promise you. I promise you. I know it's a lot of information, and I'm telling you that this time everything is on the test. Everything. This is big stuff. And next class will be low temperature sterilization, and all of that is going to be on the test as well. After these two classes, I assure you, you are capable of going through a job interview and securing a job. After next week's class, and if you review your material, you will have enough solid information to have an intelligent conversation with a department manager.
No.
Please, have enough strength of character to apply for a job.
Wait, that's with how many classes before this?
Last class, this class, and this class.
Oh, okay.
Packaging, steam sterilization, low temperature sterilization, you're in good shape. You can con your way through an interview, no problem. I'll tell you a little story. When I was young, I was in college, and I needed a summer gig. And so I saw a wonderful job, which was a summer position, working in the morgue, assisting with autopsies. Now, I really wanted to get a job doing that. I had no experience. Why did I want a job working? Not because I'm some kind of a ghoul, but because I wanted to learn human anatomy better than I learned in a college. Okay, I saw this job and I applied. There were two of us at the end of the day. A medical school student who needed a gig like this, and me. I wasn't in medical school yet. In any case, or ever, I ended up not going. But the fact of the matter is, the other guy didn't have the winning personality that I did. Remember, folks, I told you, it's all about the personality. But the doctor, the pathologist in the hospital wasn't sure. So he asked me, Steve, can you assist with an autopsy? A straight question. I said, yes, doctor, I can. Okay, you're hired. Come in on Monday, 7 a.m. I was thrilled. So I come in, I gown up, I go in, says, all right, there's our body, do the Y incision. I said, okay. How? The guy turns to the table and says, you told me that you knew how to do an autopsy. I said, doctor, that's not what you asked me. He said, you asked me, can you do an autopsy? And I said, yes, I can. You have to show me. He says, you son of a bitch. But by then it was too late. I was already hired. He says, okay, you take the knife into your right hand. Cut.
Oh, wow.
I said, okay. And that's how it happened. What's the moral of the story? I'm not telling you to lie. But if they're telling you, do you know how to perform high temperature sterilization? No. It's not. It's a direct question. Don't lie. But they said, do you understand high temperature sterilization? Of course I do. Expanding steam, removes residual air, blah, blah, blah. Temperatures 250 degrees or 275, blah, blah, blah. Yada, 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 yada. Can you do it? Of course I can. Of course I can. Just show me. Show me. I know I can. I'm the best candidate that you have seen. The best. I may not know anything, but I'm definitely the best you've got. There is no one better. When you apply for a job, they almost don't care what you know. They're interested in you. Will you fit with the group? Will you give them a hard time? Will you call in sick? The answer is, if they look at you and say, all right, and all I got to do is show this guy a couple of times what to do, looks pretty smart. Okay, good, let's go. That's what they want. They don't want a boat rocker. They don't want a boob. They want someone competent, reliable, and a positive attitude. They don't need your bad luggage from another hospital. They want to teach you what they want, and they want to keep you for the next 5 years or more. You understand? Let's move on. What was I going to talk about? Biologicals? Or okay. So, process challenge devices, or PCDs. What is the process? Sterilization. Thank you. Boy, Steve, you're really hot today. Process. By process, huh?
He's on fire.
On fire, baby. Smoking. Process. We're talking about sterilization. Bang. Why are we challenging sterilization?
See if it works.
Did you all hear that? Man, this guy is good. Steve, you gotta go. You need to apply for a manager position. Straight away. So, the fact of the matter is, we're challenging the process of sterilization to see if it works. To see if it works. I mean, truer words were never spoken. So, process challenge devices, if they were to say it in France, challenge. Anyway, did I tell you that I learned all my French from Pepe Le Pew?
Oh my goodness.
Oui, oui. Ah, my darling. In any case, so process challenge devices. We challenge sterilization to see if it works. All right? And remember, one of the places where we challenge it, which is in the most difficult place where sterilization will take place, will be by the drain, right? And I called it a biological indicator. First one, BI, or biological indicator. If I were to say it in French, it would be indicateur biologique. I'm sure I'm probably right by those that speak French in the classroom. Indicateur biologique. In our particular case, the biological indicator for steam sterilization is called Geobacillus stereothermophilus.
Oh,
Yeah, that long one. Geobacillus stereothermophilus. I hope I spelled it correctly, but it doesn't matter because you can look it up in the book. Geobacillus stereothermophilus. At least I can say it. Geobacillus stereothermophilus. It's a biological indicator for just about everything, except for one, and I'll teach you that next time. Okay, so Geobacillus stereothermophilus is a biological indicator, and what, pray tell, is the Geobacillus stereothermophilus? It is a spore. What is a spore? Spore is a bacteria with a hard shell around it that makes it more difficult to kill. Okay? That's what a spore is. Spore is a bacteria with a hard shell. A bacteria with a hard shell. Think a difference between a turtle with a hard shell and a lizard. I mean, lizard is pretty much a turtle without the shell. Make sense? If I can kill a turtle, I can kill a lizard, right? Mm-hmm. So I take this turtle, I put it inside that little pack that I circulated with you earlier, right? Biological indicator. Doesn't look like a biological indicator. It looks like a package with something. But allow us to ruin this beautiful package. Ah. And if you see, it's kind of wrapped up in some kind of a textile material. And once I open it up, it has, well, I don't know, it has index cards. Index cards? But behind door number 1, inside here, we have something else. All right? We have a ampule, and I take it out. It's wrapped in a here for you to see. And inside here, we also have something else. Inside this ampule, I don't want to open that up, is the spore of Geobacillus stereothermophilus. And in here, just to be safe, it's also a chemical indicator. We haven't put that on the board yet, so we have a chemical indicator and a biological indicator. So inside this test tube is that bacteria, is that spore that we're supposed to kill. It's inside these packages here, right? It's inside here, it lives right there, and it kind of mimics the package. So it allows these 3x5 cards, allow the steam to kind of penetrate in there. This makes it more difficult. I could just throw this in the sterilizer and let it sterilize, but no. We want to challenge it to make it as real as possible, for these things to tell us the real truth. We need to make it as hard as possible. We need to make the steam penetrate inside of a pack. It needs to be by that chamber drain, so it's the hardest place. If the steam goes in there, we have really pushed our process of sterilization to the brink. We want to make sure that the darn thing works, doesn't it? So we want to kill the most difficult thing. If we kill the most difficult thing, then the easier microorganisms are done as well. Make sense? You know that song, New York, New York? If you can make it there, you'll make it anywhere. If you can kill the spore of Geobacillus stereothermophilus right next to the drain, that means you pretty much killed just about everything. Make sense? The next one will be the chemical indicator, or CI. Chemical indicator. And one of the chemical indicators is that thing that I showed you just now. All right? It's a little thing, a strip, that if it's exposed to steam and heat, will turn a different color. I'll toss it to you. Take a look at it. Doesn't seem like much of anything. And another chemical indicator is this tape right over here. And if you look closely at this, you will see stripes going all across the tape of kind of almost neutral color. It's kind of hard to see. Pass it around. Take a look and see if you see strips in there. Stripes. Let me tell you what these stripes are made out of. They're made out of lead. They're inside this layer of tape. And when it's exposed to heat and steam, it melts and it changes color. You see the stripes in there? Kind of like yellowish. When they change color to brown or black. And they're supposed to stay that way. I'll tell you, my first day on the job many, many years ago in the military, when somebody taught me how to sterilize, I did not know what that tape was. So I saw that all these packages were wrapped up in masking tape. And I thought to myself, gee, couldn't they come up with something better? And this masking tape had black stripes in it. So what did I do when I wrapped up my first package? I got myself a roll of masking tape. You know, the stuff that the painters use. And then I took a Sharpie and I started drawing stripes on it. And I was doing it for a while. Not a long while, until somebody said, "Hey, boy, what the bleepity bleep are you doing?" And I said, "Well, sterilized packages are indicated by stripes." He said, "Son," he says, "are you as dumb as you look?" Of course, I didn't think I was dumb. But would you say that's pretty dumb? Nobody taught me. See? So I was drawing stripes. I know it's funny. If I could tell you the first day I got a job in the hospital and they told me to go measure people's temperature.
Oh my God. You went in to measure it?
Yeah, I took everybody's temperature and I come back with a clipboard and the nurse said, "Okay, son, you're the new boy." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm the new boy." So I went in, she says, "Go to the closet, get a clipboard, get a thermometer, and take everybody's temperature." So I went into the closet, I see there two thermometers over there. One is red and one is blue. I like the red one better. I took the red one and I took everybody's temperature. I come back, she says, "Aren't you nice?" She said. "You got everybody's rectal temperature?"
Whoa.
I said, "No." She says, "What temperature did you take?" I said, "Oral." She says, "Oh, honey, you used a rectal thermometer." My first day on the job in the hospital, folks. Listen to me. If I could do it and still come out and not serve any time, or actually excel in some of the jobs that I had done, you can do it too. And I'm here to share with you my pathetic experience in medicine, to tell you that, you know, my first day on the job when I used a rectal thermometer to take everybody's oral temperature, and from the time that I used a Sharpie and masking tape to mark sterile packages, it's not my fault. To the time that I interviewed for the deaner's position to assist with autopsies, never having done one or even really not seen a dead body before. It's all for your benefit. Again, I could write a book, and I'm here to tell you that it's all right to screw up, except just don't be a horse's ass. Be good about it and don't lie. Somebody's life depends on it, okay? If you screwed up, take your lumps like a man or a woman, whatever the case may be. Take it like a, you know, just take it, all right? You'll have it done once to you, you won't do it again, and as long as you didn't kill anybody or maim or injure, you're okay. All right, so I used a rectal thermometer. Okay, so chemical indicator. We have the tape and we have the inserts that go inside of a package. The outside of the package is wrapped up and closed with this tape, so it shows the doctor or the nurse or the scrub technician that this package was definitely sterilized, unless it was done by me way back when I put the little lines on there. Okay? And when they open it up, inside there they see that other little thingy that I gave you, and they say, yeah, if that turned a color, that the inside of the package was also duly exposed to the sterilant. Does that make sense? So the chemical indicator, together with a biological indicator, give us some degree of satisfaction that we're providing sterile instruments. But there is more. There is something called the MI, or mechanical indicator. These are your gauges. These are these guys right over here. Temperature, pressure, time. Machine gauges. You need to also look to see if the temperature is in the proper zone. You need to see if the pressure is right. And you need to know that your timer is working properly and it went from start to finish and it went bing, cycle is over. All of these three things need to be recorded. Mechanical, biological, chemical. Now, mechanical indicators are monitored with every load. Monitored with every load. Meaning, every time you load up your sterilizer, you better make sure that you watch your mechanical indicators. Chemical indicators are every pack contains chemical indicators. Now, biological indicator requires a little bit of conversation because they have a trick question for biological indicators. So, I'm going to tell you that the minimum standard or the minimal standard for biological indicator is once a week. So we check at the very minimum, we check the biological indicator once a week. Very important. Minimal, what did I say? Minimal what?
Once a week.
Once a week.
Minimum
Check.
value.
Minimal test, minimal check.
No, yeah. So minimal check. My God, again, I'm going senile. Minimal check once per week. So if the question is, what is the minimum number of times that we check the biological indicator? Minimal is once a week. But, and there's the big but right over here. But, if you are running mixed loads,
Before every cycle.
you do it every cycle, every load. If running mixed loads, check every load. This is extraordinarily important, as you must know the difference, because that will trick you. What is the minimum what is the minimal value once a week for biological indicator?
What's a mixed load?
Thank you. What's a mixed load? I'll explain. If I'm sterilizing nothing but stainless surgical steel, it's not a mixed load. However, if I want to throw in an implantable device and I want to sterilize that, what did I just do? I mixed the load. So in other words, if you're doing nothing but whites in your laundry, is it safe to put bleach and run it at high temperature? Yeah. But if you throw in a color item in there,
Yep.
is it safe to put bleach? Will you run it on high? No, because you're going to ruin your whites. If you're doing a mixed load, it's time to change your parameters. It's warm/cold, right? If you're running nothing, and I mean all the time, if you don't have anything but stainless surgical steel, I'll give you an example. Your dentist checks their sterilizer with a biological indicator once a week because they don't have anything but stainless surgical steel. Look at their instruments. All stainless surgical steel. So how often do they have to do it? Hey, once a week. If they're really anal retentive about it, they can do it once a day. If they're totally stupid, it's going to cost them a fortune, they're going to do it with every load. But you're in a hospital. God only knows what you're putting in those packages. Different packages, different shelves. Put them all in. Hey, it's a mixed load. It's always a mixed load. So in the hospital, if you're doing it, how often do you check? Every load. But if you were doing no mixed loads, the minimum value would be?
Once a week.
Please understand that, and you are safe. And with that, I am done for today. Believe me, it's a lot of information to absorb. We broke it up with a little humor, a little bit of stories here and there, that cockroach thing, and so on and so forth. Hopefully, it's going to keep you focused as you're reviewing this. This is good stuff. All of it will be on your test. Read the chapter gently. Don't overstuff your brain. Just read it, and remember, specialize on the stuff that I give you. Oh. I'm so sorry. I know I already taught you this, but there's also one more process challenge device, and we already talked about it, and it only works with dynamic air displacement, and that was the Bowie-Dick test. Remember that one?
Yeah.
So that's one more thing. You know, it's separate. Bowie-Dick is also a process challenge device. Also a process challenge device. And that's it. We're done. Let me kill this.